Specifically, I'm going to talk about something. El Toro, Marine Corps Air Station El Toro. I'm sure you're familiar with that. Was out in California. There was a colonel there that didn't even know that this was going on his base. But they were flying flights in that had drugs on them, and they were unloading it on his base. And he found out about it, so he went to question them. 2 days later, they find him dead.
Really?
Yep.
Is this on record anywhere?
Yes, it is. You can Google this information. Put Marine Corps Colonel.
Is this on record anywhere?
Yes, it is. You can Google this information. Put Marine Corps Colonel suicide El Toro. Okay. You can pull this out. Anybody of these viewers can do that too. The family thought it was very alarming because the circumstances. So they did a second opinion for an autopsy, and they said that there was extreme blunt force trauma to his head, which killed him. But then they had gunshot wounds, so there's a shotgun that were supposed to stage to look like a suicide. And so I'm glad that the family actually got the second opinion to say, no, it was blunt force trauma to the back of the head is what killed him, and they tried to make it look like a suicide. And this is a colonel, and the thing that sucks about this is the Marine Corps itself actually tried to use this as a tool to say, you know what, suicide awareness is such a big thing, and it happens with every rank, and they were using this guy for this purpose. But then all of a sudden you start delving into this information and seeing that, you know, the reports that he was making about these illegal flights coming in, and they were unloading drugs. I mean, it clearly, these guys, it doesn't matter what rank you are, it doesn't matter what position in government you have, it doesn't matter what you do for a living. If you're going against what they're, exposing what they're doing, they're going to get you. So if something does happen, I'm just putting it out there that it's not from my own doing. I don't fucking piss anybody up. Maybe, maybe in the business world to a degree, but it's not enough for them to sit there and do something like that. And I'm glad that I have a private security firm where I've got some guys who look out for my best interests and they know what I'm doing. So they've got my back, realistically speaking.
Free from the law itself.
And, and that's the thing, too, is any other whistleblowers who, because I urge other people to come out. If they're needing protection out of the way, I'll help with that. I'll orchestrate. But two, the other thing is, too, coming out in the fashion that we did was the best because now the right people in the government know. So it's almost like having a pit bull that's one to rip you to fucking shreds, but you have this fence that's between you and this pit bull. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the government's going to be that fence, and along with the spotlight that this put me in.
Yeah.
Because it's unsettling to sit there and see these helicopters, man. It's just, it's hysterical. You sit there and wave at them, but it's like, keep wasting your fucking money.
Let's talk about the debrief that happened afterwards.
Yes.
What happened when you got back to your command?
So when we got back onto the ship, we ended up returning our weapons to the armory, went to our berthing, put our gear away, went back to the flight deck. There was this admiral there. I'd never seen him before. I don't know who he is. But it's just very out of place. He gave a debrief saying, hey, this was good that you guys are doing for these people, which I agree with. But I have no idea who he was. But, I've been on 6 ships, did several humanitarian operations, and not once have I ever seen an admiral on any of them. And this was minor compared to the one in 2011 we did with Fukushima and that natural disaster. Never seen an admiral with that, right? So it's just very out of place. So we went to, after we concluded this operation, we ended up docking in Subic Bay for some liberty. It was just like 4 days. So the people that we encountered during that event didn't even bother to take my camera or anything. It was in my dump pouch, but it was small enough, so I don't know why they wouldn't have searched it, but they missed it, right? So here I am the whole time thinking like, fucking A, I've got something. I'm not fucking crazy, and neither of us are crazy. Like, we've got something that actually backs up if we were to tell anybody about this, and we can show them pictures of it off of a camera and not something like a computer screen where they can doctor it. Well, I spoke too soon because when we ended up going out that first day, we came back to report back to the ship, and I saw my camera on my rack. And the memory card was out of it, and it was a big memory card. And the battery was out of it. And I just see the camera sitting. I'm like, what the fuck? So I checked my locker. It was secure because that's where I had it. And I had some stuff on top of the camera in there, in my locker that were on top of the camera. And I had another battery in there, so I took that battery and I put it in there, and it wouldn't even turn the fuck on. And I had some people reach out to me that said, if you had that camera still to this day, that they could do some data retrieval and maybe able to pick that up. I'm like, but I don't have that camera. I tossed it because the fact that it wouldn't even turn on, it wouldn't do anything. I'm like, fuck, it's just a paperweight. And of course, 2009, you're not thinking of anything with forensics, where they could do something. There was people actually willing to do that, which is great. So somewhere out there, somebody's got this footage. Somebody's got that tape because that's the reason why they took it. And fun fact is that the other 5 Marines that were with me, they had their phones taken.
Did you look at the pictures before Did you have a
I
chance
know
to
I
look at
took
the pictures?
pictures and videos of it because I saw the record thing and I actually can snap the photos and you can see like it blink. That's the only way to describe it. So I knew for a fact.
But you didn't go back and review them. Okay.
No. Nope.
Why not?
One, I didn't see it, want anybody to see,
Okay.
just for that reason. You know, it was just something to keep, if anybody doesn't know about it, then if I start telling people, then obviously there's things that may happen. And of course it did happen regardless, because as soon as we're out in town, all these people, I don't know who it was who did this, by the way, but they didn't even cut my lock. They popped it off somehow because my lock was still intact. So these guys are obviously know how to do it, and I don't know who it was, but all of a sudden the other Marines had their stuff taken too. And anybody in the platoon, they didn't have any of their stuff touched. It was only us that were there.
Did they take anything else?
No. Nope. So after we get done with that, we end up going back to Okinawa, right? And this was a regular normal day. It's probably fast forward a month after we end up getting back. All of a sudden, a duty Marine knocks on my door and says, "You need to report up to the CP." I'm like, roger that. So I get my cover, run downstairs, run over, and there's nobody there. I'm like, well, what? This is fucking weird. And all of a sudden, I go inside, and there's this big opening in his office, and then they have these little offices that have these little doors that you can walk into. So all of a sudden, I'm greeted by somebody in Air Force dress blues, and he didn't have a cover on, but he had salt and pepper hair, white complexion, older gentleman. He didn't have a name tag on his uniform, which, come to find out, Air Force regulation states that you have to have a name tag on your uniforms. Marine Corps, we don't do that unless it's our camouflage or if you're a drill instructor or some kind of instructor or some sort of billet that requires you to do that. So he calls me over, and I go over, give him the proper greeting of the day, and then he tells me, go ahead and sit down over here in this office. So I sit down, and he doesn't even bother to sit down. He just says,
you, though? Wasn't the other 5 Marines?
No,
with
they
you?
end up having the same thing happen, but this guy did it separately.
It's all individual.
Yes.
Okay.
It wasn't all together. So he told us, again, with what you guys saw, you're not allowed to report this. You're not allowed to talk about it to your family, not to your chain of command. I don't care if a general even asks you. You can go to prison for this. You could be executed. And if you want to chance that, by all means, but you need to sign this. So I take the paper and I look at it, and it's a non-disclosure agreement. The only 2 things I can recall to this day is that it said TSSCI and it said Indonesia. There's the only things I could recall. But I skimmed through it and I fucking signed it because here I am thinking, okay, we're just going to forget about this whole fucking ordeal. And yet this is getting thrown in our face, and here's somebody threatening our fucking lives here with, imprisonment, death, things like that, if we're to talk about this.
Did you ask him any questions?
I tried to ask him who he was, and he didn't say anything. There's some speculation going on about this because people who know about this, whether it's other whistleblowers and other people have came forward previously, have said that these guys have the ability to impersonate or even play off as their military officials, or anybody for that matter in the government, to try to extract information to see what you know. So I'm not, because it's odd that he didn't have a name tag. He had the only thing I could tell is that he had a stack of ribbons. Air Force gives ribbons and medals for just about anything, but he had silver jump wings is the only thing I can recall. So other people I've talked to in the military community are still active, just trying to get information. And now they know because I've came out. They were saying that if it was an Air Force officer, that has to do with someone Air Force intelligence, because a lot of them had jump wings, and that's kind of the thing that they like to do. He says it's because he didn't have any pilot wings or nothing that would signify he was a pilot. It was just those silver jump wings.
Yeah.
Just with the parachute, and they had the wreath that come up like this. That's the only thing. And obviously he had the silver oak leaves on his shoulders. But so after dealing with that, it's like, okay, signed it. I'm like, great, just fucking leave it behind. The rest of my career, don't tell anybody about it. Didn't tell my family. I told my dad before I ended up getting out of active duty and going to reserves. I said, there's something I got to tell you. And he even told me this, when I started coming out publicly about it, and after I had gotten through the right part of the government to go ahead and proceed with this. And now he understands what I was trying to tell him, because I said, I just have to wait for the right time to do this, because I don't know. I'm kind of freaked out, it's something. And at that point, in 2017, is when I met Dr. Greer, and then fast forward to recently in April, making this happen with the government and telling them and testifying and briefing them what's going on, So the flack that I'm seeing with this is, there was a guy, apparently it was a Marine that came out with Dr. Greer that was more than 10 years ago. I think his name was Joshua or something like that. And he was a Stinger operator, so he was like an anti-air gunner, if you want to call it that. I don't know the MOS. But apparently, he was in South America, and he witnessed a crash retrieval. And so he stated the same thing. This paramilitary organization kind of looked very similar. Obviously, this was in the 90s, so they didn't look that dissimilar to what I saw. But he talked to a paramilitary organization. He talked about the noise that this craft made that he saw that was shot down, had a hole in it. So it was a guitar amp, because that's the only way to describe it. If it's reverse engineered, it's going to mimic the same kind of technology that these actual crafts have, right? This paramilitary organization, well, yes, that's how they operate. They're not going to be identified in any kind of way. It's going to be a generic black uniforms and gear. So, of course, and, everybody's like, oh, at least the Reddit that I'm seeing, and they said, oh, the Air Force Lieutenant Colonel. Okay, that's another thing. And it probably wasn't the same guy, but the same method. There's only one word that comes to that. It's called corroboration.
Yeah.
And it's not the first time that this guy's saying it. It's not the first time that other people have said this. But the thing is, people only pay attention to when stuff's thrown in their face, such as what I'm doing and what these other people are doing. There's going to be people who are going to come out after me who are going to talk about the same thing. I know I'm not the only one. And maybe I can get one of my Marines, that were there to actually come forward. And maybe, ideally it'd be all of them, but I know how this goes. And one guy responded when I had these government officials and Dr. Greer trying to bring one of them forward. And he said, absolutely not. He sent a text message saying, it's not worth the risk to my family, my life, my career, because he's still in the military. He's a commissioned officer now. And he was very repetitive about that. And he says, don't ever ask me to do this shit again. And you need to get the fuck out of whatever you're in. But it's the response that when I asked him to do this, and that's what he responded to, what else could it be?
Yeah.
So in a sense, that kind of corroborates it, but it corroborates the seriousness of how they're in fear of their life.
Yeah.
The other guy, I didn't hear from anything. And even taking my social media down because after I started coming forward, I just don't want people blowing up my fucking inboxes, trying to ask me details or questions or try to get interviews. I'm not about that. I'm not, the fact that our lives are kind of coming to hell to a degree because of being pursued with these helicopters and things like that. There's other ramifications that may happen that I'm not aware of, but you know what? There's a risk to things, and that's how this is going to happen. And if that's what's chosen, then I just got to figure out how to mitigate that as well.
Well, let's talk about, we had spoken offline a little earlier about all the media that's reached out. I know you had an article in the Daily Mail.
Daily Mail, and then obviously the other facets that are related to Daily Mail published this. Well, they misconstrued a lot of that, and then they end up going in from David Grush to bashing Dr. Greer about it. So it was something that they trying to use to get people's attention, and they go into this fucking narrative. I've had News Nation, I've had CNN, I've had MSNBC that reached out through LinkedIn, through other emails, because my email gets blasted all over the place these days. And I've got 4 emails, so I got the fucking shitty one I hand out to people because I don't want to get spammed through my business emails because that's money that's sitting on the table if need be. And I decline every single one of them because I know that they're going to push this false narrative. The false narratives that they're evil ETs, and this is what David Grush is pushing now, saying that, they're malevolent and they've seen ETs die or he's heard ETs kill people and things like that. Well, first and foremost, if there is a species of extraterrestrial that's out there, and they happen to be fucking malevolent, it's not wise to shoot their shit down or kill any of them because guess what? They're highly advanced.
Yeah.
If they can make this kind of stuff, imagine what they can do if they weaponize it. So it's something that, this needs to stop because all it's doing is just it's just portraying fear out to people.
Yeah.
They did this with COVID. You see the response of that. People are still living this way, living like COVID exists to this day, which it probably does, but it's not nearly as damaging as what people are saying.
Yeah, it wasn't as bad as was hyped up.
No, it wasn't. And you still have people fucking afraid of their lives. And this is the thing that is sad to see that. So this whole, now people are thinking about this going on. Now that all of a sudden worst case is going to happen. It's just this whole fear being portrayed in the media to try to scare the shit out of people, either get ratings or try to get people tuned into their networks is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's more, it's more of a personal game for them because they get money off of views. So
Now that you've set the record straight, do you think you'll go on any of these media outlets?
no.
No?
I'm not looking to
blame
get
you.
fucking famous from this dude.
Yeah.
I just want to get this information out. This ain't gonna. I've had people try to approach me with book deals and shit like that. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. This has nothing to do with trying to get money. This is trying to make sure that. And I'm not trying to convince the public here. And I'm getting that on record too. This isn't trying to convince the fucking public that this is real. I'm trying to convince the government, and thankfully they are convinced enough to actually do something about it. That's my main objective with this.
Good
because
for you.
when they come out and they start talking about the bills that they're talking about, legislations, because of people like me standing up, among with other whistleblowers coming out and talking about the same kind of corroboration, that there's man-made stuff going on, that there's nefarious activities going on behind the scenes that nobody knows about, and they're making money illegally, and they're murdering or killing people doing it.
I'm glad you're doing it.
I'm glad too, man.
Takes a
And
lot of
it
courage.
scares the shit out of me. I wake up every day unsure like what the fuck's going to happen, but that's why you had to take it day by day. And at the end of the day, there's people looking out for me, which is great, in the government and spiritually as well.
Good.
You know, and that's where I'm going to thrive with this, because guess what? If they can silence me, but they can't silence the fucking truth. And they've been trying to silence the truth for far too long. And it needs to stop. And there's anybody, whistleblowers too, this is the thing I'm going to urge. Anybody who has any information with this, whether they witnessed similar things with this, whether, you know, you're in the opposite spectrum. If you're anybody who's working in these programs, I know there's people who are listening to your show about this, by the way, who are probably on that side of the coin. Fucking man up and come the fuck out.
Yeah.
You got to stop the bullshit. And anybody who knows about this, well, guess what? If you know the truth and you're not revealing it, then you're complicit to it too. So I'm urging, get a hold of me. I mean, I'll throw my email if you can put that link in. And most of all, get a hold of Dr. Greer.
I'll put that link in there.
Okay. But yeah, Dr. Greer, I mean, he's been a good resource, and people need to understand, just like you understand with this. He is basically a sounding board for all of us who have coming forward. And all he's doing is relaying information that he knows from people. He's got a strict vetting process with this. I know people can attest to that as whistleblowers. The fact is, he's not just going to take anybody's word because, yeah, somebody said something, right?
I talked to him. I just interviewed him,
Right.
as you know.
Oh, yeah.
And I asked him, how did he decipher who the bullshitters are from the real ones? And we went into that because I think that's extremely important.
Yes, it is.
You know,
And it's
the
not,
vetting process.
he's just not taking anybody's word for it.
Yeah.
I mean, he asked me repeatedly, you know, in law enforcement especially, you know, the tactics they use is they ask the similar questions, and especially the meeting I had with the Pentagon and all these other agencies, it's like they ask the same thing because they do interrogations on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. But the fact is, my story is not going to fucking change. The way that I'm doing details is not going to change. My simple task with this is just to tell people what happened.
Good.
That's it. I'm not trying to gain profit. I don't want to be fucking famous. The only thing if I'm going to be famous for this, the only thing I want to be famous for is, oh, that's the guy that fucking stood up and wasn't afraid to do it. And he got the truth out there.
Good for you.
If I can fucking live with that, perfect by all means.
Well, Michael, I know it takes a lot of courage to do what you're doing, man. And I commend you for it. And it's an honor to have you in here.
Well, Sean, thank you, man. And what you're doing on your networks, your podcasts, your YouTube, I mean, you have a big audience. And I hope, you know, I got people trying to poke holes. Go for it. I don't give a fuck what they think. They weren't fucking there with me. They weren't there with my Marines. They want to talk shit. Go for it.
I got one last question.
Yeah.
If you could say anything to the other 5 Marines that were on the ground with you that day, because they might be watching, what would you say to them?
Don't fucking leave me hanging, guys. Don't leave me hanging. You know, we're family. We're fucking brothers. We went through this shit. You know, and I get that you got family. I get that you got kids. I got, you know, moving on. But fuck, man. I mean, you see what I'm trying to do with this. And I'm just trying to get the truth. You know, I hope that they do. And if I can get them to come out and at least understand that, you know, yeah, there may be some aspects that are uncomfortable, you know, with what I'm having to deal with. But it's just the reality of things. It's not pretty. But if you got the fucking balls to do it, you know, I don't have kids, you know, me, I still got a lot to lose at the end of the day. And I know they do too. But the fact is, I'm just sick and tired of people bitching about things and not doing anything about it.
Me too.
And it's all a bunch of talk in this fucking world. It's all a bunch of talk. It's all I see on social media. That's why I'm glad I'm off of that. You know what I mean? That's why I'm glad I'm off, because guess what? I don't get to see that anymore. I get to focus on what I'm trying to do. And for me, having people reach out to me that have open minds and they're like, you know what, I actually heard about something like this happening in Vietnam. Or they're like, I heard about this happening in 2004. And then there's people who are coming out that are participating in these operations unknowingly because they think the constitutionality of it's legal. And it's not. And that's why this is happening, because these people think that at the end of the day, they're doing something that's oversought. And they don't know that degree. It's very compartmentalized, as you know, being a CIA. You know, they only know what they're told, and they only know what they're briefed on and what they're allowed to have access to. Depends on what they're doing.
That's how they keep it secret.
Yes, they do. And not everybody's going to know that. You know, so I hope that anybody who's in those industries understands that, you know, if there's anything that seems off, you know, don't approach it how the guy that was at the Pentagon that talked about U.S. forces being involved in Ukraine. I'm sure you heard about that because you saw FBI HRT raid his house and took him into custody. And he's probably going to sit in prison for the rest of his life because of revealing classified information on these platforms.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. And these guys that are with me that are doing this, they're not doing it either. And the thing is because he did in that way means it's illegal because it's classified material to a degree. It may be illegal, but he screwed that up. Now, the way that we approached it was because we contacted the government and said, hey, this is what I know. This is what I was subject to. And they were, of course, because I approached it in the right way, they're going to reward you with the protection, with the law that they passed to make sure that you are well protected, regardless of what happens in an illegal fashion. So these other whistleblowers need to understand that. So they can come forward. They're going to have the same protections. That's why I can paint them a picture and tell them what to expect. I can point them in the direction of who they need to talk to. You know, and just the humanity needs to understand that this false narrative that's going to be portrayed in the media, such as alien invasions and stuff like that, it's been planned since the 50s. There's documentations talking about this. As far as SAIC or Science Applications International Corporation talks about the stagecraft. You know, honestly, if you're somebody who's such a high developed species or something like that, it's like walking by ants.
Yeah.
Are you going to fuck with them? No, you're just like, there's fucking ants. They just walk by. I think like the same thing that they do with us.
Yeah.
Why are they going to fucking try to fuck with us? But the same thing, we all of a sudden start shooting them down and then reverse engineering their stuff and then trying to weaponize it. And then we're using it against each other for nefarious activities, trying to use fucking, you know, these advanced projects to do very illegal, very dangerous stuff. It's just, it blows my mind how much this goes down.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just, my goal is just to hopefully get this fucking changed.
Well, I hope it does.
Me too, buddy.
We'll be praying for you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Hey everybody, I'm Sean Ryan. Click here to subscribe to the Sean Ryan Show YouTube channel for the hottest and most compelling interviews that you will not see anywhere else. I've also made a playlist of all the previous SRS episodes so they're easy to find. You can find that right here.